All right, good morning. So what I wanted to talk about today, DDN is one of those vendors that's absolutely known as an HPC vendor over our history. We have worked with a lot of enterprises in the last, I'd say 5 years in particular. It's been a focus for us on how to really bridge the gap that Ryan was talking about of taking advantage of some of the performance that we built in the past and leveraging it to solve interesting problems in the enterprise. I think it is fair to say we're very invested in understanding the problems you guys are trying to solve and helping you to solve them. We have a ton of technology. I could stand up here for a whole morning and talk about the interesting things we're doing to get to Exascale, what we're doing to add reliability into the systems. And you would get to the point where you'd say, you know, I don't need all those different pieces, but there's parts of it that I would love to have access to. So what DDN does really well, you can see kind of how we're distributed around the world. We are very global. We have a lot of field technical people, more than I think probably the average vendor, because our field technical people are the ones who tend to sit down with folks like you, understand what are your problems you're trying to solve, and that, you know, to that point of really listen to what are the problems you're trying to solve, and then share with you an architecture from the DDN side, the HPC side, that can help you to solve those problems. You'll find that working together, we can accomplish a lot of these really interesting things of accelerating time to results, accelerating time to profit, whatever your business model is. That's really what DDN is all about. We are based here in California. We do manufacturing in Los Angeles, interestingly enough, just north of Los Angeles. But we're distributed all around the globe. We are absolutely, from an HPC perspective, the market share leader for the top largest supercomputers in the world. So if you look at the top 500 list, which if you're not familiar with that, it's a list that's updated twice a year, talking about or detailing what the largest supercomputers are in the world. And then it goes through what country they're in, what their architectures are. DDN is the storage behind 67% of the top 100, and we're about 50% or so of the top 500. So when you're thinking big data problems, DDN is very, very good at solving these. But what I think is more interesting to an audience like this is how have we begun to bridge the gap from supercomputing into the enterprise. So you can see here, when we talk about enterprise HPC, DDN over the last couple of years has really come on very, very strong in that space. And it's looking at how do you do high frequency trading faster, where milliseconds matter in the profit of the traders, profit of the industry, profit of the people making investments. HPC technology can really accelerate when milliseconds matter. It's worth that investment that, again, Ryan was talking about, of taking that step over from traditional IT architectures and scaling out in a way that you traditionally have, adding more controllers for performance, adding more disk drives for capacity, and instead using HPC type technologies to really take a step to get an order of magnitude increase, often with less hardware, but using a slightly different way of thinking. One of the really interesting places in the life sciences industry has been genomics sequencing, that there's in the medical research field, it took about a decade to sequence the first human genome. That was a big deal. I think all of us remember, I certainly remember, when they finally did it and thought about, you know, wow, what are the ramifications of this, you know, from a religious perspective, from a medical perspective, from a quality of life perspective. It was pretty interesting. And that's one of the fastest growing spots for DDN right now is there's the goal of having a genomics sequencer in every doctor's office. Now, we're not there yet, but it's a way of thinking that just imagine if you went into the doctor, they could take some blood from you, and they could say, okay, you know, this is the sequence of the, you know, within the afternoon while you sit in the office and wait, they could tell you what virus you have, they know how to do targeted treatment, and oh, by the way, here's some things you may be susceptible to 5 or 10 years from now. Those are the kinds of problems that people are starting to solve with HPC technology outside of supercomputing, but also that are driving us as vendors to be able to make this technology accessible to smaller users, managed by IT departments versus, you know, a separate business unit. Certainly business units do buy HPC technology themselves as well, but there's a drive and a push to, you know, converge. That's why we're all in the same room here together today, and be able to make the technology accessible to everyone. So I'm not going to go through all those details, but for all of you in the room and those of you who I've spoken to, most of you fit in one of these categories as far as the types of markets that you're in. Oops, sorry. So what is HPC technology about? It's all about getting to the data. It's about being able to create data very quickly, but then it's also about being able to get to that data. So commercial users typically are starting to consider HPC technology because they want to get a higher return from their data. They're not just keeping it for backups. They're not just keeping it for insurance that, a year down the road, maybe the CEO needs a PowerPoint. That kind of backup type of mentality of what you use data for, still very, very important. But now we've unlocked that you can use data predictively, that you can look at what can you do with your data to make a smarter investment, to save lives, to, in the military, place the troops in the appropriate place, secure the troops. There's just ramifications all around the world. And as you look at it, it's also a matter of being able to adopt innovation fast enough. So if you look at what HPC technology is doing, we do have a goal called Exascale, which is a goal to be able to take all the programs, the data creation, the data storage, the interconnects, the compute, bring it all together into what is going to be probably the thing that puts us on that next curve to be able to accelerate in a exponential way the next round of innovation for the world. But that is just technologies that we're putting together. What that helps us, though, is to make sure that as you are looking at the vendors that are going to help you take your businesses to that next level, if you have vendors who are thinking that way, that we're going to be constantly pushing the curve to accelerate your environments. So this is an interesting point. Did you know, this is a fact that it's kind of intuitive, but if you actually think about it, moving a petabyte of data across an OC48 takes about 5 weeks. And there's been a lot of discussion around, can HPC be done in the cloud? How do you move your data to where your compute is? If you want to be able to get access to your data and you have multiple different people that you want to be able to share your data with, how do you actually accomplish that? And it's an interesting question that enterprises are grappling with more and more, that they have a lot of content. Perhaps they've already put some of it in the cloud. They have maybe 6 or 7 different disparate data centers creating data, and maybe 15 data centers that need to use the data. That's an interesting problem that DDN has been working on solving for quite some time in our product portfolio, and I'm going to just seed that into your head as we kind of continue this presentation. So identifying the right tools for the job. Traditional IT tools really aren't built for parallel I/O, parallel access, parallel compute. You'll hear parallel a lot, and if it's not something that you're super familiar with, that to me is probably the biggest jump that you have to make as an organization to be able to take advantage of HPC technology. Now, we've done a lot of things to make it easier. Ryan was saying at PayPal that HPC vendors are really listening to the enterprise as far as what do we need to do to be able to make our technology accessible. I'm going to talk about some things we've done to make this easier so that you don't have, a huge gorge that you're jumping, that maybe it's just a brook or a stream that you're jumping to be able to take advantage of the technology. But if you look at what's underneath the storage systems, traditional IT systems just aren't designed to be able to handle these big data, heavily analytical mixed I/O environments. And that's what HPC technology has been designed to do from the start. So what that enables us to do is bridge the gap. You'll hear that a lot of HPC companies are doing things to help. I was really interested. The gentleman from Lawrence Livermore, who I was seen next to, was saying that they're starting to look at a commercial program to be able to take HPC technology and provide it to public types of companies. And CSA does the same. DDN partners and actually offers cloud type services that offer DDN storage and DDN compute in the cloud. And what all of this is doing is making it a little bit easier to make the enterprise able to test applications, test codes, test workflows in an HPC environment. And before you take that huge jump and say, I'm going to go invest in a $10 million compute cluster, here's a way I can give it a try. Find out what the numbers of orders of magnitude acceleration we talk about really apply in your environment with your data set and your workload. So there's a lot of things that we're doing, not just to make the technology accessible from a interface perspective, from a failover perspective, but also from ways that you can try the technology, kind of try before you buy, that are available to you as well. And these are things you probably don't want to go out and research. You have lots of things to do other than researching technology. And that's really what we're here to do. That's why we're at these conferences. I love being at these events so we can understand what kind of problems you're trying to solve and how can we ease that barrier to entry so you can prove to your organization, you can prove to your procurement departments, yep, this is going to make a big enough difference that we should hire a few different types of people and bring in another vendor. So what DDN offers? When we first, I'd say our first decade within the supercomputing industry, this product called SFA, or just very high performance block storage, was what we were focused on. Designed for large file, extremely fast throughput, able to accept data as fast as a supercomputer could create it. That's pretty much what HPC storage was originally designed to do. But now, as you look at the environments where DDN's fastest growing market is the enterprise HPC space, it grew about 180% last year. It's all these other pieces that we really need to be able to be digested and accepted within the HPC space. So what's interesting is we have integrated tiering, flash disk, big fast spinning disk, slow spinning disk, high capacity disk, tape, cloud, object storage. We have all those different storage mediums. So from just a building block perspective, if you're looking in your environment and saying, well, we have a flash initiative, how does this tie together? Certainly we can work with you on that. But what's even more interesting is that we have the capability that most of our development now is going into the connectors. So these little arrows between the systems, where I know that sounds kind of funny, that's actually where most of our development is going. It's software that intelligently ties those different disparate pieces of technology together. So why do you care? What that offers to you is you can have a really high performance storage system connected to your compute environment. But then going back to those 15 different data centers that perhaps need access to that data, we'll do that in a single unified namespace for you. When you start to look at the petabyte of data and how do you move that around, because most DDN customers are either at a petabyte and above already, or certainly expect to be at a petabyte in their horizon, we help to do that for you in an efficient way too. So object storage has the capability to take advantage of WAN connections in a very efficient way, so that as you're sharing data across multiple different data centers, across probably not OC48s, you're probably using much slower network connects. We have the capability to tie all that technology together. But what's really interesting is you're not now looking at a tier of high performance compute and high performance storage and figuring out how on earth do I tie it to the rest of my organization. We'll do that for you. So that gives you access to high performance storage, high performance compute, connections over RESTful interfaces. So if you're moving to more of a web-based model, you can have web users accessing the content through a whole host of different RESTful interfaces. Traditional NFS and CIFS, if your applications are designed for NFS and CIFS, it's very unlikely you're going to just go rewrite all of your applications to write to a parallel file system client, at least not on day one, maybe over time. So that's what all these different connectors do. And then we also have a technology that really ties the compute and the storage together more closely. In the enterprise HPC space, we're increasingly finding that people don't want to go through and learn about all these different technologies, how to tie them together, how to integrate an InfiniBand backbone. All those different pieces are new. In a lot of cases, we have our customers asking us to just provide the entire thing for them. So an end-to-end, often including even the compute piece, all the way out to an object storage-based cloud solution. You just say, here's my requirements. I need this much capacity, this much access, this much performance. I just want you to deliver a rack or 10 racks, depending on the size of your environment, that solves that entire solution for me. And DDN has that capability too, to be able to just give you a plug and play solution that will meet your needs, already be pre-configured and ready to go for you. Of course, you still need to maintain it on an ongoing basis, but it makes it much easier to take that first step into the HPC market. So it's interesting to see that Gartner is seeing DDN as one of the lead challengers in the Magic Quadrant. I put this up here not really for marketing purposes, it's more just to show you that we are bridging the gap very rapidly. We've always, for years and years, we've been 2/3 of the top 100 supercomputers. That's what DDN does very well. Each year we continue to move closer to that leader quadrant though with Gartner. And I have to do the Magic Quadrant response. It's very laborious, if any of you have ever done it. Gartner goes through and looks at every single detail of what you do with your technology portfolio. They take inquiries from enterprise customers all day long and really want to be able to represent, it's kind of their pride on the line and their ego on the line, their reputation, which vendors that they recommend. And so as they start to look at what DDN does, of course we're fast, of course we can solve a lot of technology problems, but building in things like data security, you wouldn't have even seen security built into our systems a few years ago. Now, if you look at it, it's not anything like what you would see from NetApp or someone like that, but we're moving that direction. We're putting in security between nodes, we're putting in security into the connections into the system, multi-level security for government deployments. So these are the kinds of steps, listening to our customers, that we're starting to add into the technology so you can adopt it in your organization. But you'll see that both Gartner and IDC continue to push DDN up and to the right, and it's because we're solving these big data problems. We can solve them uniquely in a way that traditional IT storage vendors cannot, but we're also putting in some of those features and functionality to be able to connect it into your environment in a much more easy way. So why customers use HPC technology? This is just to give you a feel for, most people think, when you think what's the fastest storage in the data center, you would typically think some kind of flash system. Something from one of the folks, Extreme, Violin, whoever it is, that they're leveraging flash systems to be able to get the best performance possible. What you'll find is that HPC technologies typically, even without flash in them, are much, much faster than an all-flash array. And it's because of a lot of things that Ryan actually spoke to some of this, that we use InfiniBand backplanes. We handle parallel I/O. We handle parallel jobs in such a good way that where there's some bottlenecks in POSIX-based systems, bottlenecks in the way applications are programmed and leveraged, you just don't see that in HPC technology. So we are fast. The front grill plate of our storage technologies is actually emulated after Ferraris. So you actually look at a Ferrari grill and you look at our bezels. That is what we think about when we think DDN. However, what's cool is that you can take advantage of that kind of performance in a much smaller footprint. So why does the enterprise care about HPC? Sometimes it's be able to solve better business problems better. In some cases, it's because you can get more work done in a smaller footprint. We typically take approximately 1/8 to 1/10 the storage footprint to deliver the same amount of performance that you would take from a NetApp, EMC, someone like that. So if you're just looking at, your data center's getting full, you're running out of power, you can get a lot more work done in a much smaller footprint with an HPC technology as well. I throw up some of these applications just to show we do have experience with, and in a lot of cases, we've worked very closely with our customers to be able to integrate our technologies into these application landscapes. Hadoop has not been a huge market for HPC technologies because, for those of you who are running Hadoop infrastructures, you know that that was done on the most commodity storage you could possibly build, taking 3 copies of data, letting the storage just in the compute technologies be the lowest cost component you can have. However, both parallel file systems that we support today now have connectors into Hadoop because there's enough data in the Hadoop deployments that people are starting to realize that some accelerated performance when you're getting to really large scale is interesting. And another issue is that performance density, that they just don't have data centers big enough to put more commodity nodes in. They need more performance in a smaller footprint. So we are just starting in the last year to see Hadoop deployments on our technology. Wasn't as big of an adoption curve as it was in the market, and that's really why. But you'll see Vertica, SAS, KX, a lot of enterprise applications that we are now integrated with. We go to their user group meetings to really put together what are the blueprints of how to leverage our technology with that application to deliver business advantage. So again, as you're here for the next day or two and doing meetings with the vendors, one of the things you should really challenge us to is, I like the idea, I like the benefit that I think I could get from your technology. I'm not really willing to do a science project right now because I'm too busy. Challenge us, see what we can do for you. That's what DDN does really well, is figure out how to kind of offload the science project work, because that's what we do for a living, and make it easier to get this kind of technology into your environment. So requirements of a big data, and I kind of say big data more in large data problems. If you have large data problems that you're trying to handle and you need to maintain performance at scale, here's some of the things that we recommend you look at. The ability to sustain performance at scale and with a mixed I/O environment. We do a lot of benchmarking. We have benchmarking labs in Japan, Germany, and California, and we go and look at specific workloads with the file system at 1 or 2% capacity, 20%, 50%, 70%, 100% capacity, and look at the workload of what kind of performance can we deliver at scale as you're actually filling up those systems. We're designed to be able to sustain our performance regardless of if you have small I/O, mixed I/O, large I/O, and if as your system scales. You probably have had the experience with your data centers where as you fill up the systems, performance starts to drop off, quality of service starts to drop off. When you start to do a bunch of disk drive rebuilds, you start to see a really significant performance degradation. Those are all the things that we handle well. And going back to what PayPal was saying, you would expect it. We are all about performance. But now we are moving into the enterprise and needing to figure out how can we add in some of the other functionalities that you guys need too. So how we do that without affecting performance, one of the things, and I know the folks over at NetApp really well, every time they add a feature in, it takes a fraction of percent of performance. It takes, memory, it takes processor, it takes software overhead. And for them, it's been worth it. That's been what their target market has been all along. They're very good at it. But every single feature, as you look at that on-tap data sheet of all the things they do, takes performance away from the system. Fair trade-off, totally fine. What DDN is doing to maintain our performance and yet still be able to deliver these features is essentially putting an enterprise head node in front of our storage system. That enterprise head node can offer different network connectivities, different functionalities. This is something we're launching later this summer that can tie into VM environments, snapshots, deduplication, a lot of those things that you want. We're going to just deliver it in a separate head node so that we don't affect the file system performance, but still can offer you the kind of performance that you guys need. So it's pretty cool stuff on how we're bridging the gap, but still being true to who we are as the performance leader. Management simplicity at scale. That entire screen I showed you of all of our products that go from compute out to the cloud, that's something that DDN is continually investing in. You can call it software-defined storage. You can look at kind of how EMC rolled out the Viper strategy. We're on a very similar path that we're tying our products together, starting to unify how can you do data management between not just tiers, but technologies, and how do you manage it in a more unified way. We're not done by any means, but that's the path that we're on, a multi-year path of tying all these technologies together and ultimately being able to deliver a software-defined layer over all of it. A lot of technology involved there, but that is the path that we need to get on for the enterprise as well, and we're a couple of years down the path at this point. So a few technology bits. We've been talking about parallel quite a bit, and really what this delivers to you is a traditional scale-out appliance is designed that each of the NAS clients go in and talk to a single node within the scale-out system. Then on the backplane, in the background, the scale-out system is sharing the workload across the cluster to be able to provide to you a larger system, more performance, but you're very limited by the connection into the system. But that's the way a lot of applications were designed, a lot of ways that the workflows were designed. Parallel performance essentially delivers the capability that from the client nodes, you can distribute the performance across the entire cluster coming in, and you don't have any kind of bottleneck as data is moving into the storage cluster on the right there. Then on the back end, for quality of service, we deliver that through InfiniBand connections on the back end of the system. So we can not suffer data loss, not suffer lost packets, not suffer significant performance degradation as the system gets full and you start to have problems within it. We handle that and can maintain our performance very well because of that architecture. Let's skip over here. So designed to grow. When you look at how can you add new node performance to a DDN system, we absolutely expect our customers to grow from single petabytes up into dozens. We do have customers well over 100 petabytes in a single scale out, scale up type of solution. So as you look at what kind of scale can we deliver? On the cloud side, we have customers that are delivering solutions that are adding 20 million objects being added per month into their web cloud store. That's the scalability capabilities of the object store. And then from a file system perspective, pushing up into the 100 petabyte type of range in a single unified file system is something that we're offering now as well. Designed to grow, add capacity over time is something that we really can deliver in a very simple way. And then I mentioned to you that the performance that we can deliver, that performance density, we really see customers talk to us about a couple of different things. What is the cost per IOP? Of course, what is the cost per gigabyte? But how much data center space, how much hardware do I need to be able to deliver this kind of performance? And this is where DDN can compete very well. Yes, if you look at one 4U box of DDN, we're not cheap. You'll never see us saying we're going to be the cheapest company on the market. We don't target being the cheapest company in the market. We try to target being the value add performance leader. We can handle your large scale data problems because that's what we've been doing since the inception of the company. However, we throw a lot less hardware at the problem. So you'll see that where maybe with one of the other storage vendors, you need 10 head nodes to deliver the performance that you need. With DDN, it may be just 1 or 2. Those 1 or 2 nodes may be a bit more expensive, but they're not as expensive as the 10 nodes you would have to take from another vendor. So we often need we have a lot less cost in the hardware because of the way we're able to design our performance. Also just takes a lot less storage in your data center space. So if you're limited to data center footprint, which a lot of you in California I know are, you'll see that in a 10 petabyte type of system, we can do in about 4 racks what I believe that's an EMC system we're comparing against, that they would take about 8 racks. So we do have design for high density. We do custom JBOD type of expansions to be able to get a lot more disks in a very small device. But if you don't want proprietary hardware and you want to be able to go to more commodity hardware, we have those options as well too. So we are moving increasingly, especially with our object storage, to be able to offer more commodity type of hardware. You can pick your platform and still leverage DDN technology, but if you really want the ultimate bang of performance, cost performance, and density, we'll still recommend our own technology from a hardware perspective. And then end-to-end tiering. This is a really big deal. We're seeing in the enterprise that most enterprises are accustomed to having multiple tiers of storage. Tape is still a portion of the environment. Cloud is a portion of the environment. And DDN has the capability to support all those technologies in a unified tiering perspective in a single global namespace. So if you're looking that you would like to move to kind of a high-end performance technology on the front end, but you want to be able to tier and take advantage of all those different tiers in the back end, that's absolutely an option with DDN, and again, something that we're more than willing to talk to you guys about. And then global collaboration. This is the biggest area, fastest growth market from a product perspective. So enterprise HPC is our fastest market growth. From a product perspective, global collaboration is the biggest, fastest growth area that we have. We use object storage, something called WAS, to be able to support private cloud infrastructures, share content across multiple geographies. Often in kind of the more university space, we'll see that there's a supercomputer sitting at a university creating data. That's where all the applications live. But they have a mandate to share that data across the university ecosystem of the entire state or an entire geography. And we use web object storage to be able to do that. What it gives is the data scientists that are working on the compute cluster and have experience with the high performance technologies and applications and all of that can do the work within the native environment they're accustomed to. But then we can share in just a web-based protocol that content in a WAN network efficient way. And people who are accessing that data from a security perspective, we now have the controls built in that only the right users have access to the right data. We have the capability that they can tie their web-based applications into the data store without having to become HPC aware. So there's a lot of things that we've done on the content collaboration side. And we have some really huge customers, some of the web-based or the Silicon Valley-based web companies that we work with every day are using this technology. So it is very well proven at scale and really solves a lot of interesting problems for our customers. And then there's the cooperation of HPC and enterprise that I mentioned this to you earlier, that one of the things that we're seeing is a big trend towards enterprises see the need for HPC technology, but want to try before they buy. So they're putting their workloads up at an HPC center and let the HPC center just manage it for them. In a lot of cases, we're working with those HPC centers to provide the storage behind those systems to be able to make it digestible. So we have pay-as-you-grow, capacity-on-demand type of models that we'll put into those centers that are developing these services that we'll make sure they can have DDN technology in the background, but as they market that service to the ultimate end user, we'll grow the capacity kind of on demand. So that's interesting for the people providing the services. What's interesting for you all is that you can take an IT infrastructure and shift it over to HPC with people at an HPC center who know how to manage it, can just sell you the capacity as it's available. You can try before you buy, or you can just leave your entire workload up there, which is interesting. And we have a lot of partners we work with in this area that, again, over the one-to-one meetings this week, if you're interested in knowing who those are, how you can connect to them. Different sectors prefer different partners based on security and funding and all of that. So we do offer that, and it's really been an important piece in helping to get the adoption curve accelerated for HPC in the enterprise. And then as you look at the cost differences of cloud services, this is an area that we get asked a lot. I think most of you probably at this point know that cloud services for small data sets, very effective from a cost perspective, very easy to ramp up, something that most companies are using. I mean, we even put our own data up in Amazon at times, in Dropbox and other types of areas. But when you start to look at large scale deployments and you look at not just the time it takes to get data up into the cloud, so going back to that 1 petabyte takes about 5 weeks over an OC48, the big problem is when you want to access that data set. It's slow from an Amazon type environment. It's expensive because they charge you to pull your data back. And it's not really designed for a data analytics environment where you're constantly using your data, where you're having 10 data scientists or a Hadoop environment or your applications constantly reading that data to do different projects. Amazon is really more designed for put it up there to store it and protect it, which is a great use and something we all need. However, when you're actively using your data, it's not the best solution out there. And you can see the different cost models that I have up here of this is modeling a petabyte data set of at about 3 years, it's about half the cost of Amazon for kind of a normal workload. If you're a data intensive workload, it's much more cost effective, much quicker to use your own private object store. And then from a performance perspective, it's really unmeasurable. Amazon doesn't use HPC technologies. They often are distributing even their compute services across different data centers. It's very complex and they're very good at what they do. But guaranteed performance, parallel IO, core HPC technology is just not what they're built on. So you'll never see them be able to deliver the kind of performance that we can. So in summary, HPC is definitely a competitive weapon if you use it properly. We're very interested in working with you on what is your problem. Every one of you around every one of these tables has a different problem you're trying to solve and why you're here at this event. And we'd love to talk to you about how could we put this tool in your bag to help you accelerate your business, time to results, reduce risk in your environment, predictably use your data in a way that you're not able to do it today. We really want to work with our enterprise users to figure out how to use our technology and use our data to increase your competitiveness in the market. You'll also find that if you do a benchmark of HPC technology, of DDN technology, next to your traditional storage environments, we will absolutely deliver much faster, much more performant results, and you'll look like a hero in your environment as far as what you can deliver. But the big but is you also need reliability, and we get that too. So you can't just put the performance in but have your data center down for a day each week while you fiddle with the technology knobs, and we get that too. And that's a lot of what you would hear about HPC data centers. It's fine, you have 40 students that are fiddling with it. It's okay if it's down for a little bit, and that's really the case in a lot of HPC environments. We've spent the last 3 or 4 years really investing in crossing that chasm, moving to the leaders quadrant in Gartner by having the features, availability, and functionality that you need. We're not 100% there. If you go through RFPs, you'll still see areas where you're accustomed to, it's just obvious that storage systems do X, Y, and Z. We may only do X and Z, and we can explain to you why. And that's an evolution, but it's also a different way of thinking about your data center, that if you want to deliver performance results at orders of magnitude faster than you are today, there can be trade-offs, and you have to understand how to get around those with your technology, which of course we can do for you. So it's not just an apples to apples replacement, but it is the next generation of how to accelerate your businesses, and we'd love to have time to talk to you more about it this week. So with that, I think I'm right on time. I can answer questions now, but we have boardroom sessions as well where there's other members of the DDN team who will be here and we can have smaller group discussions. But if you have any questions right now, I'd be happy to field those. All right.
Well, thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.